Hello, world. Welcome to the Breakout Finder podcast. I'm your host, Nate Liss. You can find me on Twitter at @AnOutrageJew. And with me this evening, the one, the only, Ryan Lopes. You can find him on Twitter at StillRyan5. Not quite a turtleneck, but cut from the same cloth, arguably.
Bro, you gotta keep the neck warm. You know what I mean? You know what it is? I think I just sweat a lot, so I don't want people seeing just the beads of sweat just coming down. You know what I mean? Like there's times during the show, man, where you kind of get put underneath your microscope and things start to spiral out of control. So your boy's got to stay cozy to start off, and then halfway through the show, I hate myself for wearing something like this, and here we are.
I'm sliding out of screen because I just realized that I still have my fan running, and here's the best part about that. When I turn the fan off, the temperature in the room goes up about 40 degrees. So if you thought you were sweating,
it gets hot, bro.
Check me in about 20 minutes. I'm going to be in a swimsuit with my shirt off, water wings on. Listen, Ryan, things are trending upward at Breakout Finder. There's so much good news every day. I feel like the Santa Claus of the fantasy football industry. I'm just constantly pulling things out of my bag or my sack, if you will.
Just throwing good news nuggets around.
That's right, just all the time. And so we have more good news nuggets. As I shared with you moments ago, you are staring at the version 2, if you will, of the Breakout Finder, the updated Breakout Finder. He can see it. I told you people.
It exists. I can confirm.
So it's there. It is coming. I'm planning on sharing a tweet or a post here pretty soon, breaking down a couple of these classes. We're going to continue to do so as draft season rolls around. People are going to want to see what's going on here because this is going to be such a great tool for those of you that are trying to not draft busts in your fantasy football league, or those of you that are trying to find steals in the middle of the late rounds. Who are those guys who are worth getting a hold of? The Breakout Finder can help you identify these players. That is the value with it. Ryan, I got a question for you, though.
Talk to me.
Did you get a chance to listen to this voicemail that I recently posted?
Bro, I saw you throw it up. Got very excited. It's not often we throw a lot of freebies out there through the Patreon world, but your guy Chip, I believe it was, came in hot, came in heavy, came in passionate.
Yes.
May have had a couple adult sodas.
Yes.
But I haven't listened to it all the way through, but I can only imagine just the absolute gem you just let out there for everyone.
It's absolutely epic. If nobody has heard it, go to patreon.com/breakout finder. Check out the voicemail I received from Chip like 8 years ago. I've been carrying it with me on my iPhone because it was so good.
For the moment.
I was like, I felt like, who's the guy that directed God damn it! What's the movie with the Avatar? Was that James Cameron?
Cameron, bro, yeah, right? Cameron.
Like waiting for the technology to advance enough that I can
finally
create
caught
this.
Up. There it is.
Finally, I was able to move it from my phone to a place where I could share it, and with it's 2 minutes and 54 seconds, and it is worth your time.
Yeah.
There are plenty of free posts over at Patreon. You should check it out. We're doing a lot of cool stuff over there. Patreon.com/breakout finder. Ryan, you've been dropping bombs all over the website recently, and it's been getting a lot of views, a lot of good things coming from it. You're grinding. It's an exciting time. We have actual football this week, right? Actual football.
Real live. The bullets start flying. This is for wins, bro. They do count in the wins and loss columns, and it gets really real, man. Packers and Bears start things off, and it's been you said it, man. All the way leading up to this point, everyone's out there publishing rankings and their sleepers and all this stuff. So we did all that, man. Now we're just ready for the real thing.
Can I ask you a question?
Talk to me.
What the hell are you drinking a water for?
Bro, it was a I'm going clawless. I'm going clawless today. Your boy grabbed an ice cold Pellegrino out of the fridge. Man, I found myself at a live concert this past weekend, man. Hootie and the Blowfish were out there jamming. I couldn't say no, man. For anyone that hasn't seen Hootie live, highly recommend. Your boy showed up to the concert venue. We obviously tailgated. Had a handful of college buddies that came back into town. Man, I showed up with a goddamn Coleman cooler filled with an assortment of claws, an assortment of Trulies.
God.
Never have I attended an event where it's been more seltzers versus the beers, but I stuck a couple Bud Lights in there, of course. Man, it got out of control real quick. We're out there doing all the stupid stuff, man, flip cup and all this stuff, drinking, and the concert starts at 8 o'clock. We're still in the parking lot. I must have been 7 or 8 claws deep. And long story short, man, I turned 30 back in May, and and total transparency, because that's what we're all about on the show, man. Being very, very, very transparent. I've been washed for about 6 years, man. I can't drink anymore at all, bro. We get done with these shows. I had 2 claws last week. I stumbled out of my office, and so at the concert, man, I'm over there just, when I get into that moment, you know what I mean? When I step up to an event like that, I know I get my mind right. I know I'm gonna drink. So, but dude, White Claw hangovers are terrible. And I've been hungover since Saturday. Somehow I'm still carrying this thing with me, man, over the Labor Day holiday weekend, man. It was something else. So, to summarize, go see Hootie. Don't pack a cooler full of claws, and get out there, man, and jam, and hopefully you are a better drinker than I am, man, because I suck at it.
Well, I mean, I feel like if you're gonna get away with drinking White Claws, do it at a Darius Rucker event.
Oh my gosh, dude, they were everywhere. I thought we were big on the claws, man. You were talking about it. God, it might have been a month or two ago, and I thought you were kidding. But dude, tall boy White Claws absolutely exist, and I never seen one in the wild before. But the car or two next to us, obviously some girls had tall boy White Claws. I had to indulge, so I'm over here drinking my own goddamn claws, and I'm over here stealing or borrowing a couple tall boys. It's totally unnecessary, man. But great evening, great weather, great music. But yeah, dude, claw hangovers are just the worst. Do not recommend that.
The tall boy claw is literally the equivalent of driving a Mazda Miata. Like a dude in a Miata is the tall boy claw.
Oh yeah,
It's embarrassing.
Again, I didn't feel great about it, but at the same time, I'm surrounded by people that are embracing it, bro. I'm gonna be out here throwing the old beanbag around, playing a little cornhole, and I'm gonna have a tall boy claw for sure.
Well, speaking of beanbags, can we talk about Laquan Treadwell for a minute?
Yikes!
Wow.
That was. Correct me if I'm wrong. You might have stayed true to Laquan Treadwell kind of throughout that process. And man, if it's the note that I had written down here, which to me, I need this to happen just on the kind of poetry, man. We had Doctson and Treadwell both who have had obviously less than ideal starts to their respective careers. Both were waived or cut, whatever the proper vernacular is. Doctson goes ahead and signs with the Vikings. I need Laquan Treadwell on the Redskins just to feel kind of the earth move a little bit.
I don't know what to tell you about Laquan Treadwell. Yes, I was a fan. I was a fan of Laquan Treadwell way too deep into it. I was that girl that her friends are like, he doesn't love you. You got to get out.
You couldn't let go.
He's doing things behind your back. You got to get out.
Let go.
And I was like, no, he would never do that to me. He's just a good guy. You guys just don't know him.
He's believing him.
And then the Vikings cut him. I mean, the Vikings cut him. Here's the worst part for him. He couldn't have ended up on a roster, and don't get me wrong, Adam Thielen ascended from the depths of hell to get to where he is. He couldn't have ended up in a more difficult wide receiver room. I dare you to find few other groups in the league, aside from maybe the Rams and a handful of others, that would be a more challenging roster to break into the starting lineup of. Stephon Diggs, elite. Adam Thielen, I mean, arguably, for what he does, elite. I don't want to downplay it. I mean, and they've shown a propensity to throw it to the tight ends. They go get Irv Smith. Dalvin Cook is healthy. Even if Laquan Treadwell was an actual functioning part of this offense, what would his role be? 50 targets, 65 targets? I mean, I really don't know what he was going to be on this roster. And I held on for far too long. But if you go look at the Breakout Finder database, which you can't. You can't right now.
You can't look. Just take Nate's word for it. He's looking at it. He'll tell you about it.
I'm looking at it right now. There is something that has been created called the breakout percentage. The breakout percentage takes into account the metrics that we've created, market share data, breakout age data, draft position data, and it creates one composite percentage amongst the 2016 class. Laq Treadwell ranked number 4 in breakout percentage with a 28.1. Josh Doctson ranked number 6 with a 26.7. Everyone below them has either busted, had a mild career, or is named Will Fuller. Now, Will Fuller has been a hit.
No, it doesn't. Again, it's obviously sad for Laq Treadwell. It's sad for those of us who may have held on for too long, as Nate may have unfortunately done. But at the same time, it's kind of exciting. It's kind of refreshing to know that these numbers, these metrics that are out there that we're sitting on, and which you guys will get, in due time. You got to just take our word for that these metrics and that these percentages and that these scores truly do mean something, man. Treadwell, man, it was 23rd overall. Again, the roster wasn't, the landing spot wasn't great for him, but the amount of hype, and again, the draft capital that was invested in him, 6'2", 221. Didn't run very fast, 4.6 speed. But I mean, he was polarizing enough at the time, and obviously looking back on where he's landed now, kind of where his career's gone, it would, in hindsight obviously, but you would figure he'd be a lot more polarizing. So it definitely hasn't worked out the way that many of us would have thought. And now we get to see where he lands next. The note that I had, which might have changed from last night when I was kind of scouring the timeline, was that he had a visit either lined up or set with Buffalo, which that's, again, it would be so fitting that he would land in Buffalo to kind of close this thing out, Nate.
I mean, and these guys were drafted in the same class, one pick apart. Here's my opinion on it. Whether they were drafted too highly in people's opinion, I kind of disagree. I feel like if you're going to take a shot on a player that you think has first-round caliber wide receiver talent, you're going to take him in the 20s. I'm actually okay with that. It's the Kevin Whites. It's the picks that go way too early. It's the John Ross. It's the Tavon Austin. These picks, these guys that go in the top 10, those are the ones that I argue with. But they each had warts, right? We knew that Laq Treadwell wasn't a good athlete. Josh Doctson was a better athlete, but Josh Doctson was an old prospect. We heard that the entire time that he was coming into the draft process. Neither guy has worked out. There's been injuries. There's been aptitude comprehension issues with playbooks. Arguably, Josh Doctson had the least competition for target share or opportunity amongst a Washington Redskins team that has been struggling forever to put anything concrete together out there. Now, with Treadwell, again, going back to this, even Jarius Wright, I mean, there has been, sturdy competition around him the whole time, so it has been difficult, but I'm not going to make excuses for him. Both these players never lived up to the hype. The draft capital may be a bit early, but I think that this is a fair point if you're drafting guys. I mean, you look at DeAndre Hopkins, you look at the Cordero Pattersons, you look at these guys, they're kind of in that 20 range. I think that's a fine place to select these guys. They just didn't work out for numerous reasons, probably. But we're moving on. Josh Doctson, who knows? Maybe the Vikings wanted Josh Doctson all alone, right? He goes one pick before Laq Treadwell, and he's off the board. And here are the Vikings taking Laq Treadwell. Maybe they wanted Doctson. Maybe this is their chance to get a shot at the guy that they wanted, 3 years ago. I don't know, Ryan. You tell me.
I don't know. I think the stars finally aligning narrative, man. I don't know. I just think that these players will kind of fumble around, whether on their teams that they landed on now or if they they bounce to another team or two. But I think the window has kind of shut on both of them, man. Sadly, because again, these were two of the more highly regarded players, like you said, in the same class, taking a pick or two apart. I can't spend another minute talking about Josh Doctson or Laq Treadwell here. So let's keep it moving, Nate. The idea behind this show in particular, again, as you mentioned, we got live football on Thursday. The season starts this past week and a half, 2 weeks. Everyone's had their drafts. So for the most part, drafts are behind them. So we'll have some season long spins on some of these news and notes and headlines, but a lot of the show's going to focus on these various teams across the league, man. Cleaning up their rosters, getting ready to set that final 53. So a lot of these players we're going to talk about were favorites of yours, of mine, of the draft community at large, the fantasy football community at large, and these players are no longer on their original team. These original teams spent draft capital on them, and these were players that we had argued about for months and months on end, man. And I can't wait to do it again with this 2020 class. So moving right along, bro. We have Carlos Hyde out in Kansas City. The dude bounced around from 2 or 3 teams last year. We talked about it last show. We talked about, I'm sure, the show before. But Carlos Hyde, for all intents and purposes, man, stinks. And we both agree. We both agree there. He is out in KC, lands in Houston. Again, last show we talked about our guy Duke Johnson. I don't foresee Carlos Hyde posing any sort of threat to Duke Johnson. The only kind of earth-shattering move there as far as getting Duke off that job would be if the Texans opted to go out and somehow get a Melvin Gordon. But again, I'm pretty confident in Duke Johnson fending off the likes of Carlos Hyde, bro. Any final takes on either of those players before we just keep it pushing? Because again, we don't want to spend a ton of time on Carlos Hyde. Nobody
wants to spend a ton of time on Carlos Hyde. Here's the thing about Carlos Hyde, though. There is no one else on this roster. I mean, it's Duke Johnson, and it's nothing. So in that sense, owning Carlos Hyde might be worth it as a cuff to a Duke Johnson injury. I mean, Duke Johnson has never had a feature workload, so we don't know if he will hold up against the rigors of like real NFL usage. Not saying he can't. We're big fans of him. We're big fans of his elusiveness, his pass catching ability. But who really knows what Duke Johnson will be in a feature role? So owning Carlos Hyde as a hedge to Duke Johnson might be worth it. But the minute that Duke Johnson goes down, you got to believe that Houston Texans are going to be on the phone looking at, a veteran that's sitting at home, and I can't even think of a name right now, or maybe they're looking for a guy on the back of a bench, or maybe at that point a Rashad Penny type player they might go and you know what I mean? One of these fluid running backs on a roster that might be buried. There's a lot of things that could happen, but Carlos Hyde does have the ability, especially in redraft, to have temporary value. For that sense, I would want to own him, but I think all of us believe that Duke Johnson is going to get the lion's share of the carries. Yeah. We believe in him. This is an offense with arguably the quarterback one in the 2019 season, right? Most of us believe that Watson's going to come out and lay waste to the NFL, especially in this offense that may force him to pass even more than we thought now. Yeah. So I'm a fan. No, I don't think that there is much to say on this topic. Is there any other running backs you want to talk about?
Yeah, so we'll just keep it going right on the list here, man. Obviously, this isn't noted here, but of course, the whole Ezekiel. I'm so sick and tired of all the Ezekiel Elliott stuff. That is all that is being talked about, man. So a little before we hopped on this pod, I want to say he landed back in Dallas. It was him in the Dallas-Fort Worth airport, whatever like that. So the idea is that Ezekiel Elliott's going to get signed, if not tonight, maybe tomorrow or the day after. So the idea is that, again, he's going to play week 1. The other running back holding out, which we do have notes on here, is, of course, Melvin Gordon. Again, don't have to spend a ton of time here. These have all been talked to death, but it does look like until either someone opts to trade for him or Gordon kind of just swallows his pride and shows up and signs whatever that tender might be that's may or may not be left on the table, it is going to be the Austin Ekeler / Justin Jackson show for the Chargers. I guess the idea is that Ekeler's going to get, for season-long purposes here, and maybe you can throw a dynasty take or two out there too, Nate. But for season-long purposes, the idea, the working idea amongst the analysts and the community at large is that Ekeler's going to be, maybe get that 60-40 split. Ekeler maybe more useful as a pass catcher as well. Justin Jackson maybe a bit tougher, but both I think able to carry the load, especially if they are more or less splitting work, whether it's that 60-40 timeshare, whatever it might be. So any notes you want to add about the Gordon situation or about again his backups here?
We touched on this before. Between Austin Ekeler and Justin Jackson, I'm a much bigger fan of Austin Ekeler, but I want to touch on the Gordon thing real quick. So Josina Anderson reported today that there is one team supposedly in preliminary trade talks with the Chargers for Melvin Gordon. It sounds like the Chargers This team may be willing to pay the $13 million, and the Chargers are looking for a first and a fifth, it says hypothetically. But there is a team out there that is potentially reaching out for him. Who that is, I don't know. I've heard speculation all the way from Tampa Bay to, who knows. So
if you're a Gordon owner, who do you want it to be, Mr. Nate?
I mean, of course we want it to be Tampa Bay, right? This is supposed to be this high-powered offense. I would love it to be Tampa Bay. But as you've even seen, right, people are out there looking at who he's following on Twitter and Instagram. There's speculation
Dozens
that
of teams.
The Eagles, the Raiders. He started following players. I don't know. It's all speculation, right? But getting back to Ekeler and Jackson, as you mentioned, Ekeler being potentially a better pass catcher, I think that there was a lot that was ignored about his running last year. I mean, Ekeler only ran the ball 105 times last year. He ranked number 36 in yards before contact per attempt, so his offensive line wasn't getting him a lot of yardage, but he ranked number 1 in yards after contact per attempt with 3.3 in the NFL. So that is per attempt. That was a higher per attempt than Melvin Gordon, Saquon Barkley, Nick Chubb, and all of these guys had a higher yards before contact per attempt. So they were getting better blocking from their line, and they were actually getting less yards after contact per attempt than Ekeler. So I think there's something to like here. I think that he is undersized, right? He's just 200 pounds, little under 6 foot. So that's, again, something to be concerned about, whether he could, again, hold up to the NFL rigors. This is what we go back to so many times when we talk about, running back in Denver. Why am I always spacing? Hit me with it.
Who's that? Freeman.
Not Freeman.
No, Lindsey.
Yes, Philip Lindsay. Like we go back to these. Jamal Charles is this outlier. The guys like that. This doesn't happen often where these backs that don't have feature size can carry these incredible workloads throughout a year. So in that sense, again, owning Jackson is a good thing because he is talented. I prefer Ekeler, but if Ekeler goes down or if he gets an injury or whatever, you want to own, one of the two. I'd prefer Ekeler, but I would like to own both if I could.
I had, again, talking about everyone having their home league drafts or their finishing up their last FFPC or whatever it might be. So my big money home league draft, which I've been doing for the past 8-9 years or something like that, I ended up starting 4 wide receiver and picked out of the 11 hole. Melvin Gordon at 5'11", man, staring at me. I could not let him go. I think that was more or less the range where he's been going in as far as ADP and probably maybe even slipped a little bit further if you've been drafting, of course, in the past day or two. It's one of those things, man. He's just staring at you, knowing that he obviously is that elite bell cow as far as volume and stuff like that. So not a player that I could pass on. So for my own selfish reasons, I hope that he either does find a suitor and someone else is, and there's another team out there that is crazy enough to throw out a first rounder and pay him, but or he just ends up reporting to Chargers camp for that matter, man. So I am invested. Didn't think I would be invested, but here we are. And so speaking of keeping on the running back train here, man, and we talked about him last show again as well, man. Our guy Derrius Guice, his coach Jay Gruden came out and said straight up, the offense carries wise will pretty much go through him, and him being Derrius Guice, of course. We saw him get might have been 11, 12 runs in his preseason debut. And I think after the game he might have come out and said, "Listen, I wanted to keep going. These players, especially coming off injury, man, you want to get that confidence back. You want to get hit. You want to remember what it feels like." So it was good to see Guice get out there, dealing out a nasty stiff arm, and I know that got me personally excited. Unbutton the shirt a little bit. Again, it's been wheels up. I know you and Matt Kelly have talked about that buy low window, which has obviously slammed shut at this point. So very excited for Derrius Guice and for those that quote unquote or hashtag trust the process. So it looks like you could be lined up and getting in line for this reward on a Washington team that neither of us are really too confident in. But again, Derrius Guice definitely has the talent, man. So what else do you got on Guice to kind of button this thing up?
Well, look, we've talked about it before. Guice back in 2016 was the best back at LSU. This is after Leonard Fournette was drafted inside the top 5 in the NFL draft to the Jacksonville Jaguars. And then you go and look at what Gruden is saying about about his role in this offense. Last year, Adrian Peterson averaged 15.7 attempts a game as a rusher. Chris Thompson was mixed in there as well. It looks like 4.3. So, I mean, if you factor that this is a team that ranked number 14 in rush attempts last year, if he's going to get the lion's share of the carries, even if we're not sure what his target share is, you're still probably looking at 16 to 18 rush attempts per game. And with a player who has the juice and the home run ability of Derrius Guice, the way that when you started Saquon Barkley last year, you almost felt like it was inevitable that he was going to break off a 40-yard run.
For sure.
And I don't feel that way about many running backs in the NFL. I feel that way about Derrius Guice. And you can see it all the way back to college. He's a big threat. He's shifty. He's hard to stop, and he can get through a tiny crease, and he flies. He's a super athlete. And again, this is a guy that fell for some really odd reasons in the draft. I think he ended up I think we talked about this, the 6th running back selected in his class. Should have been the 2nd, arguably a first-round talent. Should have probably gone in the early 20s, fell to the 2nd round. So there's a lot to like about him. And it's obvious your window is completely shut. When he was having complications with his surgery, post-surgery, that's when you were supposed to buy. It's too late now. If you own him, enjoy.
Salute,
if you don't own him,
sure.
Too bad. It's over. You can't buy him now.
No. That again, you and you and Matt Kelly have hit that point home over and over again. That window was open for a period of time, and it is been slam shut at this point. So if you didn't jump on it, if you didn't act soon enough, that is your loss. Bouncing around a little bit more here, bro. I want to talk about another player that you and Matt have talked about a little bit, and a player that was near and dear to our hearts, and a player that you just actually tweeted about yourself after the news broke. I'm going to call him whatever Kelly was calling him, man, Keneal Harry, or instead of.
Yeah.
So given he's on the IR now, he is now known during his IR stay as Keneal Harry, man. So obviously he unfortunately finds himself on IR in New England. And again, we talked about it a week or two ago. New England all of a sudden goes from being kind of left for dead, or as left for dead as a New England team could be left for, to all of a sudden returning Julian Edelman, Josh Gordon free to play, and all these stars coming back on the field, so to speak. So it's never down in the dumps for too long in New England, bro. So what was your take on the Harry news? Are we obviously have to be a little bit sad about it.
I mean, it's tough. This was already a player that he was coming around in the offense, but Belichick pushes you. You see undrafted free agent Jacoby Myers rising. He makes the roster. And unbelievably now, with N'Keal Harry going down, I mean, I'm not concerned that Jacoby Myers passes him forever, but this is such a great opportunity for a guy like Jacoby Myers, right? But they bring back Josh Gordon. He comes back from suspension. Julian Edelman was always going to be a staple. Demaryius Thomas gets cut, then gets brought back to this roster. This is a rough way for a player's career to start. We've seen this same thing happen before and literally derail a first-round pick's career, and they never get back to what they were projected to be. It's a very hard thing, and especially being in the New England Patriots system, a system where they're expecting you to know where to be on time, know the playbook, run it flawlessly. There's no room for errors, and when you're not getting opportunity to progress and build, that is kind of a death sentence. Now, I would buy N'Keal Harry if people are afraid, because I still think he has the highest floor of this entire class. In the Breakout Finder database for the 2019 class, he is the number 1 overall with a Breakout Finder percentage of 50.1. So his floor is still really high. We talked about this all offseason. You shouldn't be afraid of what his potential is. But injuries are unpredictable, and you should never try to project them. But we know historically, players that get hurt, this really slows things down. It's not good news.
No, it's for New England as a whole. Again, a first round draft pick. And on the surface, it doesn't look like it's good news with the Patriots. Again, returning Josh Gordon, Julian Edelman 100% healthy, or trending that way. Demaryius Thomas cut, re-signed. So he, one would imagine, is going to factor in. So again, it's and they have that backfield. So this is a team that, again, as long as Tom Brady and Bill are around, even when they get hit with something like losing their rookie first round receiver, things are still are still rosy, so to speak.
Can I ask you a question? It's completely off tangent.
Here we go.
Look, I know you seem like you're like a hip hop head, right? I believe you are. I see the things you post. I mean,
listen to it all, bro. Either I'm at a Hootie concert or I'm throwing on whatever the newest mixtape is. So anything in between.
So you're out there, and you've declared earlier that you're 30 years old. So 30. You're a little younger than I am, but you were around and aware and lucid and probably a hip hop head at the time. This album, to me, though, a great album for its time. Not profound, not saying anything that changed the world, but maybe one of the best summertime albums of all time.
For sure.
Question: Nelly Country Grammar, is it an all-time great album? Top 50.
Top 50 maybe. I mean, again, I kind of what you said, I couldn't agree with more. It had, whether summertime or whatever it was, it has a few legit anthems on it, man. Country Grammar, EI, Ride With Me. These songs, man, where, again, this was my childhood and growing up or whatever, that kind of era. Nelly coming out with the St. Louis Blues jersey on and stuff, bro. I'm sitting here, I'm trying to hop on the internet and buy a St. Louis Blues hat or something like that, man. That again, he came out hot and heavy, bro. But again, as you said, lyrically, it's not gonna win any type of awards. But again, he came out, man, heavy with the production, and it was just filled with these anthems. So if your top list takes into account just the amount of, obviously the plays and stuff this gets versus the actual content, and obviously everyone's got their nostalgia and kind of what your mind harkens back to, whatever the case may be. But Country Grammar, so you're telling me Country Grammar holds a very deep and fond place in your heart?
I mean, it was my senior year of high school.
Okay.
When that album came out, not to date myself, but I'll be 36 next week. I'm getting up there.
It's a big week, bro.
I'm getting old. Yeah, I mean, it was my senior year of high school, and we were bumping it. And I think that was the same year that Back That Ass Up came out from Juvenile. I think it might have been the same year.
Yeah, dude. When that music video came on at my parents' house growing up, man, and it was one of those things where, you know what I mean? You would have it on the TV. You had to be very aware where mom's was, bro, because there was some things, man. That video was something else.
If I'll tell you what, though, even to this day, if that song comes on, those like deep, like, string notes come in.
Oh yeah.
It'll rip a club apart, man. People
Absolutely.
love that song. It's
Absolutely.
still good. But I think Country Grammar deserves at minimum a place in the top 50, right there at 49, right there at 50. No, it's not profound, but you could throw that album on from start to finish at a house party and it'll crush, man.
I mean, everyone's got their Spotify playlist, their summer playlist or their house party playlist or whatever it might be, and there is for sure. On a vast majority, you're gonna get one or two of those tracks from that album on there, man. Just timeless bangers, bro. That's what they are.
Look, let's talk about another banger.
Here we go. Hit me with it.
You hit me with it. I don't know.
Do you want me to hit you with it?
Yeah, you hit me with it.
All right, man. This is my guy. Again, this is the way that I kind of have been kicking around this one. I think I've come to terms with the fact that I might be unreasonably high on Elijah McGuire. Obviously, the Jets go out and they get Le'Veon Bell. They pay him a boatload of money. Ty Montgomery has had a good camp in New York as well. So Elijah McGuire, unfortunately, kind of the odd man out, ends up getting waived and finds himself in the Cleveland practice squad. So I guess I bring this up just because the practice squad thing kind of threw me again. Totally admitting that I might hold Elijah McGuire in this high regard that he doesn't deserve to be held to. Amassed 130 receptions at Louisiana I want to say it was Louisiana Tech. I forgot where he played for, man. The Raging Cajuns or something like that.
Yeah,
But he
Lafayette.
was,
Yep.
yeah. So he was a player that I was particularly high on. And again, I thought he was a player that had a little opportunity last year in New York and didn't really necessarily capitalize on it. But long story short, odd man out in New York finds himself on a practice squad. Do you think he deserved, excuse me, a little more than a practice squad look, or do you see him as, again, just a guy that is going to float around on practice squads from this point on?
I mean, he went unclaimed, right, through waivers. Not the best sign. We're going to get to a name, I think, later in the show of a player that multiple teams were going after on waivers. Hasn't really been great over the past couple years. Not a good athlete, 18th percentile spark athlete. Landing on a practice squad to me is almost certain death. Now, here's the thing. This depth chart is not a good depth chart to have landed on. We have a guy that a lot of people are arguing, and Nick Chubb is a top 5 dynasty running back. Matt Kelly's preaching it. I'm right there. I need to see the receptions go up. I'm in that Dalvin Cook argument at top 5, but I can be fluid there. But then you got Kareem Hunt, right? And if Hunt sticks around, I imagine Hunt is going. I think a lot of us believe that he's potential trade asset, or he signed somewhere else.
Right.
So maybe next year, maybe if Hunt moves, McGuire gets elevated up. But I mean, even if he was on this roster, it would take a Nick Chubb death
Right.
for anything to happen.
Right.
Did he deserve to go somewhere else? Maybe, but he's a 6th-round pick. He hasn't really done anything in the NFL. Yes, he was productive in college, but a lot of guys were productive in college. And he's not a good athlete. So I'm not really sure what to make of it, other than the fact that this is just not a good place to land. It was a rough roster to land on.
Yeah.
And on a practice squad. I say throw the dirt on the casket.
Yeah, I strategically kept the closet door closed because I had the Elijah McGuire jersey just hanging out for all to see, and I didn't want to knowing that knowing that this is where the conversation might have ended up. I don't want to have that on full display, man. So another running back that was on the move, it landed in a much better spot, and obviously is a much better player despite his previous season and despite his age. LeSean McCoy, I believe age 31, maybe age 32, obviously getting up there, coming off a 3.3 yard per carry season, maybe with an asterisk next to it. We know that Buffalo offensive line was banged up, but the narrative remains that he's a shell of his former self. But his former self played very, very good football for Andy Reid, who of course coaches for the Kansas City Chiefs. Tons of banter on the timeline. Damian Williams has become over the past month or two one of the more polarizing season-long fantasy assets. No one really knows what to make of the situation, and with each passing day, it seems to get a little more murkier. This was a player in Damian Williams that initially, Eric Bieniemy came out, the running backs coach over in Kansas City, came out and said, "Listen, he is a guy that we have full confidence in, and he's going to carry the load." This was a few months back. Andy Reid kind of echoed those thoughts, and then fast forward a couple months, a couple weeks back rather. Andy Reid came out and said, "Listen, this might be more of a running back by committee approach." Darwin Thompson was all the rage, and then all of a sudden they signed LeSean McCoy, who was recently cut. So all of Kansas City's actions Kansas City's telling us something, right? All their actions are saying that we don't necessarily believe, no matter what we said previously months ago, we don't necessarily believe in Damian Williams. Or, Andy Reid recently came out when LeSean McCoy was signed and said, "Hey, Shady's got to kind of learn the system again, and Damian Williams is going to be that guy. He is our starter. He's listed as a starter." So I guess we say all this to say, Nate, what is the takeaway for you here? Whether it's a season long lens, a dynasty lens, LeSean McCoy, is he another person that you're throwing the dirt on the casket there?
This just goes to show that Andy Reid doesn't give a shit about your fantasy teams.
Mm-hmm.
He really doesn't, right? Like everybody. God, if you take a time machine back or a space shuttle, you know what I mean? Like Superman flies around the Earth in reverse and spins it, and it goes back in time, and we could sit down at everybody's fantasy draft, and of course you can go on Twitter and search, go back in time, and look at all the people that said Damian Williams was the guy. And I don't want to get into this conversation because my timeline has been gross. I have seen the same three people fighting about Damian Williams and LeSean McCoy and rattling off the same damn stats for days and days and days and days. It feels
it's the most
like,
beautiful time of the year, man.
I'm like, will this war ever end? I come out of my tent sipping a coffee. I'm hearing bombs going off over the horizon. I'm like, will this stop? This is ridiculous. Look, LeSean McCoy is going to hurt the situation.
JJ, our guy JJ Zacharyson. I'm not sure he tweeted himself, but he might have retweeted somebody that basically I forgot who it was, but someone basically said, full disclosure, I have no idea who's going to win or lose this LeSean versus Damian argument, but whatever side it is guaranteed to take the longest, most generous victory lap. It's going to be whatever you've been dealing with now, bro, on the timeline. The same dozen stats going back and forth. It's going to be even more gnarlier whenever a true winner kind of steps forward here, man. It's going to be a lot of old tweets and a lot of told you so's, which to me is what Twitter's all about. That's just peak Twitter. Fallout in Buffalo, Nate, your guy Devin Singletary. Does he stand alone here now, man? Is he really the big winner? Damian Williams may be a loser, LeSean McCoy may be a loser, split in time. Buffalo, man, different situation now.
Yeah, man. I mean, we were talking about Devin Singletary. Look, if nothing else, Devin Singletary had the draft capital. LeSean McCoy, people want to say he's washed. He looks like he still has some juice. I mean, watching the highlights, he doesn't look like he doesn't have some of the bursts that he used to have. Obviously, he's not 24-year-old LeSean McCoy, but he wasn't washed in that sense. But Devin Singletary, one of the last man standing. I've seen people tweeting out. People hate Devin Singletary so much, and they hate his 12th percentile SPARQ score, which I hate too. I can't even look at it. I'm blocking it right now. Here's the thing. So many people hate Devin Singletary so much that they are caping up so hard for TJ Yeldon. I have never seen more TJ Yeldon supporters than I have since Devin Singletary was sort of crowned the potential starter in this offense. Now, Frank Gore is a free square. I mean, we don't know what's going to happen there. But you got to believe that Devin Singletary carried the load at Florida Atlantic. We've seen it. He can catch the ball. We've seen it. He can run between the tackles. I kind of got chastised for saying on the Sonic Truth podcast, or maybe it was this podcast. I don't know. I basically said that his game speed and the way he looks when you watch him on film looks a lot different than a guy with a 12th percentile SPARQ score.
Sure.
If I never showed you that, and again, I swear to God, you can take the best analysts in the world. Don't show them any athleticism. Just show them tape and have them write down what they believe everybody's, 3-cone and 40 time and all these things will be. And they're going to get it very, very inaccurate. Right. A lot of people get this wrong.
Right.
And he just looks better on film than the numbers indicate. Yeah. And for that reason, with Josh Allen, a mobile quarterback who's a threat that makes defenses play him differently, he might not be the worst option. And if you're picking him up, you were getting him in the second round of rookie drafts before. He's obviously pushed his way into the first round of Dino rookie drafts now. But you're still getting him relatively late-ish in redraft. I think he's going about the 6th round right now, 7th round of redraft leagues. Mm-hmm. And depending on his volume, he might smash that ADP.
Yeah. We Dane Brugler of the Athletic, man. He might have been the first guy that I saw, or might have been the first guy in general. It's all about being first out there, of course.
Absolutely.
Although Dane's one of the most humble dudes I think of the timeline. But he came out and said during the pre-draft process that Devin Singletary reminded him of LeSean McCoy. So how fitting, LeSean McCoy out, Devin Singletary sitting there to kind of take over that seat. And to your point, and we talked about it plenty during that pre-draft process when we were going over our rookie rankings post-draft as well, that Devin Singletary, to me personally, was easily one of the most fun watches. His highlights were ridiculous. Again, he take into consideration the conference and all that stuff. But as you were saying, you watch him play football, you quote unquote watch the film. You don't feel like you're watching a player that's going to test as poorly as he did. So now it looks like, again, the lane has opened, and he's going to get his opportunity to some degree to prove the hashtag doubters wrong. Man, this one I'm gonna get a little emotional here, Nate. This one hurts, buddy, man. You penned a beautiful piece over at breakoutfinder.com. Our guy, Greg Dortch, bro. Man, a casualty in New York, man, waived. Greg Dortch. We hardly knew him. We thought we knew him. There was a lot to like, a lot, a couple warts again, as you and I might have discussed pre-draft. Do we just want to take a moment of silence, man? Do you have any kind of parting words for Greg Dortch, man? This is a tough time for you and your family, I imagine. But I want to give you the mic.
Yeah, me and my family earlier, we said a prayer for Greg Dortch.
Right.
I was truthing pretty hard for him. You get out there and you just
Tough,
bang
man. I know.
You bang that drum so hard, right?
Let it out. I know. Bang it. I know.
You just show up every day.
I know.
You try to do your best.
Tell him about it. Tell him
try
about
to do your best job, and then it's like, oh, he's great. He's young. He's only 21.3 years old. Oh, he produced, in a tough competition, a group in the ACC, and puts up 89 catches for over 1,000 yards. Oh, he's an amazing kick returner.
Check
and
the boxes,
Jets,
bro. Check
the
the boxes.
Jets apparently don't want him because he can't play special teams. He's 5'9", 170. He's undersized. He murdered at the Senior Bowl. He's young. The Breakout Finder has him ranked number 4 overall in the class, 34.7% breakout percentage. This is a guy that if I was going to bet on anybody potentially, finding their way back into the league someday from this class, this is somebody that I would bet on. His agility score was the 78th percentile. So, he's an agile player. There's just so many things that work in his favor, and I think the argument was always size. And I cannot wait till Rondale Moore comes to the NFL so that we can have that conversation.
2021, man.
Let's have that conversation.
Absolutely. We will be here given our thoughts and opinions on the situation, man. But yeah, I mean there are going to be a couple players. I think Jalen Rieger over at TCU, man, this year, a bit of a smaller cat as well. So there's gonna be some players here that maybe those that were again, as you said so eloquently, throwing on the cape for Greg Dortch, maybe those same people might have been fans of these smaller wide receivers that now are a little bit nervous,
I mean, we should give a shout out to Nick Whalen. I mean, Nick Whalen was beating the Greg Dortch drum. I mean,
that was his guy, man.
I can't see any of his tweets. I still can't see his tweets.
We got to change that for you, buddy.
He blocked me harder than Dikembe Mutombo. I mean, can anybody reach out to Nick and let Nick know that I want to make amends? Will he at least
Nate wants to come home. Nate wants to come home.
Let me see your feed, bro. I need Nick Whalen. I need the aroma of your timeline wafting onto my timeline so it can intermix with all the Darwin Thompson, LeSean McCoy, Damian Williams arguments that have been going on for 4 days. Let it go, guys. Go outside, enjoy the world. Go look at the birds and some trees. Maybe observe the outdoors. Live your life. Maybe spin a globe in a circle and stop it with your finger and buy a plane ticket and go visit somewhere. Get off the internet. Quit fighting about this. You've been fighting about it for 4 days. We don't know anything. I don't know anything. All I know is Greg Dortch should have never been cut and Nick Whalen should have never blocked me. It's the biggest mistake you ever made.
I didn't, again, I want to apologize to the listeners, man. I knew bringing up Dortch might have pulled on a couple strings here, and y'all might have just seen the fallout for that. But maybe something we could talk about here, okay? Might make our friend Nate a bit happier. A player that was on the outs but immediately landed back on the practice squad. Jazz Ferguson stays in Seattle on the practice squad, 6'5", 227, not necessarily a great athlete, 4.45 speed, had a couple highlight catches in some early preseason contests. And Matt Kelly, again, we keep bringing up our guy Matt Kelly here, man. He famously might have drew the parallel and said something along the lines of, if you are touting Hakeem Butler, you have to like Jazz Ferguson, who is essentially, he's built like Butler. He's just a better player. Butler obviously on IR, his season cut short, and Jazz Ferguson on a practice squad. Nate, does Jazz Ferguson? He doesn't make up for Greg Dortch, buddy. No one's ever gonna fill that void. But does Jazz Ferguson on Seattle's practice squad, does that give you an ounce of hope, a glimmer of hope?
Good old smooth Jazz. Here's the problem. I mean, what does that say about Jazz Ferguson when Seattle is completely devoid of wide receivers? I mean, we don't know what DK Metcalf is. We believe he's going to be a game-changing talent if everything goes together. Gary Jennings was supposedly doing absolutely nothing, but there's no way Seattle was ever going to cut him or, as a fourth-round selection. We all know what Gary Jennings did as well. Very talented receiver. I still believe in him. Man, Jazz Ferguson, what an interesting story, because this happens so often with Seattle. We saw it a couple years ago with Kasen Williams, sort of a preseason stud. We even saw it with Paul Richardson. He ends up leaving the roster eventually after we have these blow-up games. Seattle just has a type, if you will, and Jazz coming back to the practice squad is best case scenario, because this is a team that is an injury away from calling up a guy like this, because it is already so razor thin with playmakers. I mean, Russell Wilson has essentially gone his career. Tyler Lockett, obviously a hit of a draft pick, an incredible player. His rapport with Russell Wilson, all the stats, they speak volumes about that pairing. But Doug Baldwin is an undrafted free agent, comes out of nowhere, has an unbelievable career, retires. Huge void here. They draft DK Metcalf. Somebody tried to tell me the other day on Twitter that DK Metcalf was a bad pick. I'm like, what are you talking about? It's like one pick from the third round. If one of the most athletic wide receivers we've ever seen is sitting there, almost the last pick of the second round, you're not going to take him. He wasn't a bad pick. John Ross was a bad pick. And I don't want to go on another tangent here, but I like that Jazz Ferguson landed back on this roster. He's got familiarity with it. He played well in the preseason, and don't be surprised if an injury or two brings Jazz back in here.
Yeah, man. A lot, again, had a couple cool highlight catches. I believe scored a touchdown, maybe two in the preseason. Obviously is that hashtag team big wide out, has that big body, looks and somewhat plays like a Hakeem Butler, who many of us, I won't say any names, were particularly high on. I love Hakeem Butler, man. But another player that I think we both agree, much like Carlos Hyde, might just flat out stink. Elijah Holyfield, man. I had a note here that he is still running his 40. will list being waived by the Panthers. Again, Elijah Holyfield, famously or infamously, 5'10", 217. 4.78 40. And then obviously had the pro day, and everyone's like, man, listen, maybe it was just combine jitters, no problem. Pro day, he's gonna smash it. I think he rolled out like a legit 4.7, maybe doubled up with a 4.8 or something like that. But the good news for Elijah Holyfield fans, 27 reps on the bench press, man. He's strong. The biceps are looking good, always looking good. Elijah Holyfield, man, was polarizing enough. I believe a Fusu View favorite. I get very excited when Fusu, kind of drops his name and kind of fights back. But yeah, Elijah Holyfield, man, not good. I just wanted to talk about his 40 time. I really have nothing else to really add to it.
I remember after he ran his 40 time, somebody tweeted his 40 time and then called him Elijah Holy Shit. Yeah, I think that no, I mean, good for Fusu. I mean, you gotta, again, anytime you can move Leonard Fournette 40 spots below Elijah Holyfield, you do it.
You gotta do it. You gotta do it
in a flash. Yeah, there's nothing to talk about with Elijah Holyfield here.
We're gonna literally move right on. Alfred Blue to injured reserve was the next note that I had noted, and a player that, unlike Elijah Holyfield, a player that I know I'm particularly high on. I believe you are a fan to an extent as well. Things again, sort of looking up for Raquel Armstead out in Jacksonville, man. However, a player that you kind of hinted at earlier, so feel free to take this one, both ways or whatever angle you want. The Jaguars also acquired Divine Ozigbo, who's a player that, again, I know Josh Norris over at Roto World was on early, and a player that I liked as well, from Nebraska, man. So Alfred Blue to injured reserve, Leonard Fournette, history with some sort of health complications. Hashtag might not, or slash rather, might not be very good. Things could, Jaguars can find themselves kind of leaning on one of these two players, whether it's Armstead, whether it's Ozigbo, sooner rather than later. Any season long takes, Nate, or probably more predominantly the dynasty takes on either of these backs?
Man, this was a guy that I actually really liked in New Orleans. I mean, clearly we all like running backs that go to New Orleans, despite the fact that he was behind Kamara. But I believe that Ozigbo had like 3 teams or 2 other teams that put in waiver claims on him. And he ended up with Jacksonville. I mean, this is a team that spent, I believe, a 5th-round pick on Armstead. And here we are looking at Ozigbo, a player with an incredible agility score, 70th percentile, 82nd percentile burst score, pass catcher back in college, tough runner, feature size, 5'11", 222. We talked about this all offseason. There have been injuries with Leonard Fournette throughout his career. There's been inefficiency with Leonard Fournette throughout his career. Draft capital has saved him. I mean, this is a story with tons of running backs in the past, Trent Richardson, many others, that the draft capital can carry you for a very long time, even if you're playing like shit. And I'm not saying Leonard Fournette's a bad running back necessarily, but this is a good player to put behind him. When he went to this roster, I mean, it seems crazy that he's an undrafted free agent and Armstead was selected in the 5th round, but I already look at him like they're neck and neck. And if Leonard Fournette went down, it's a definite running back by committee. And I wouldn't be surprised if Ozigbo had a shot at running away with this job. Now, here's the thing from a dynasty standpoint. If Leonard Fournette tears his ACL in week 3 and goes down, there's absolutely no chance that either of these 2 running backs is the RB1 on this roster next year. And even if Leonard Fournette is still there by the time that his 5th-year option comes up, you can bet your ass that either 2020 or 2021, the Jacksonville Jaguars will be selecting a running back, probably not as early as they did in the past, because the NFL teams are starting to learn that you don't necessarily need to take a running back that high to get production, but you could be looking at an early day 2 guy, and that's the guy that I want. So as a temporary value, if Fournette's playing like shit and he gets benched, I don't know why he would, but if he gets hurt and one of these guys ascends to get the starting job, sell them immediately. You do not want to hold them. I wouldn't want to hold them. I'd rather get a second for them. If you can get a first, that's great. They will be replaced 100%. The Isaiah Crowell story, the Arian Foster story are folklore that you don't hear often, and I don't see that being the case here.
Right on. Yeah, I'm excited that you opted to speak about Ozigbo first and foremost, and perhaps a bit higher on Ozigbo. And like you said, they are more or less neck and neck for you, which again goes to speak to the kind of talent that Ozigbo has. Again, a definite surprise, undrafted player. Moving on to a tight end who I know I was kind of trying to connect the dots earlier this offseason. Ricky Seals-Jones, I believe recruited by Cliff Kingsbury when he was during his time at A&M. So again, you figured, again, going down this whole narrative street here, familiarity. Last year, I know a lot of people were kind of touting Seals-Jones. Then we all realized that the Arizona offense was bottom of the barrel. So wrong place, wrong time for that. But this may have been a bounce back year. Obviously, they went out and signed Charles Clay to kind of start things off, but even still, things were more or less kind of looking up. So it's I won't say a surprise. None of this stuff necessarily is too surprising, but a surprise wave cut to an extent. Seals-Jones out. Arizona lands in Cleveland, quickly lands in Cleveland. Obviously, we know about David Njoku there. Not necessarily a great spot in terms of, I'm not sure we're going to see Seals-Jones anytime soon. Just jotted his name down because he was a player that I know I was kind of speaking particularly higher on, or maybe higher than the consensus. And now kind of finds himself more or less, I imagine, wasting away, for lack of better words, out in Cleveland, where the targets and the options are plentiful.
Yeah, I mean, look, I went, I had this debate with Scott Barrett, I think last week, about David Njoku and what his upside is. I Seals-Jones might be a fine player to roster behind Njoku, but I'm not typically chasing the second tight end on a roster unless there's someone super duper elite. I'm just not necessarily a fan, but in deep dynasty leagues, why not, right? This is a team that is going to throw the ball, and there is going to be opportunity, maybe in a 2 tight end set. What's his upside really? Do you believe he's going to outplay David Njoku, a former first-round tight end selection who proved to be highly explosive and a super plus athlete? I don't think so. I think all of us believe David Njoku takes a big step forward this year. So, fine landing spot, but, being behind Njoku is kind of death, especially a young, up-and-coming, ascending tight end with his level of talent.
For sure. I added kind of a little bit of a sidebar here, Nato, kind of mid-show as you and I were talking. We have a small handful of other players and topics to discuss, but the show is slowly coming to an end. But before we kind of wrap things up here in the next 20 minutes or so, I wanted to talk about, we talked about it a little bit at the top of last week's show. There may or may not have been a Patreon a tweet about it, but last minute we kind of rustled together some of the Breakout Finder writers. There's a Patreon or two in there, and there were a couple lucky first DMers in there as well, those that follow the Breakout Finder account on Twitter. So we put together a 12-man league, PPR, of course. I believe we're starting a quarterback, 2 running backs, 3 wideouts, a tight end, and 4 flex. No team defense, no kickers. We had our draft last Wednesday, I want to say it was. Nate, you were being the father of the year, man. You were out on your daughter's soccer sideline, man. You had to do it. Again, there are some things you have to do, but for those of us like myself that were in the draft room, you know what I mean, riding the wave. I drafted at 5 overall. I believe you drafted 8. At 8, right? So real quick, man, why don't you tell the people, and again, next year, and we'll talk about this more, of course, next year when we get closer to season start again. I want to do a couple more leagues. There was a ton of really good feedback from people that wanted to get in these kind of listener type leagues. So that aside for now, Nate, do you want to talk about your first couple picks here, the ones that you were present for, kind of your thoughts going into it, given the roster construction and all that stuff, any kind of little nuggets that you want to share with the faithful following here?
Oh, God. Do I? Listen, I was at my daughter's soccer practice, and I was sprinting up and down the field with her while doing a draft for 45 seconds between picks. First of all, that was a huge oversight on my part. 45 seconds is way too fast. Way too fast. We had this conversation in advance, but nonetheless, 45 seconds.
Yeah, you were 100% right.
So I started that thing out. I never start out with 2 running backs. I never do. It's just not my move. But in a redraft league, I was trying to get some guaranteed production. So first overall pick at 8, my first pick in the first round, I took James Conner. I'm buying into the offense. I'm buying into that opportunity share. I'm not worried about Jalen Samuels. I mean, we all looked at the last preseason game. I believe he was on the field for 14 of 14 or 12 of 12 snaps. James Conner is going to get all the workload.
Absolutely.
My next pick, man, I went Joe Mixon. I'm all in on Mixon. It seems crazy. A.J. Green is hurt. The offensive line is banged up. John Ross stinks. Anytime I can throw a dagger at John Ross.
100%. You have to do it.
I went after Joe Mixon. I haven't owned him anywhere. I've always bought into him. I've been a fan. I think the opportunity is going to be there. He's going to have some tough sledding. I mean, especially week 1 against the Seattle Seahawks, who now have Jadeveon Clowney, who is just going to be an absolute wrecking ball on the outside. Third pick came back on wide receiver. This is pick 32. Stephon Diggs still there. Felt like a no-brainer. Had to add a wide receiver. And then I'm just going to stop at pick 4 here, and this is the one that makes me want to cry. This was a little early, and I was concerned about this. But I took Melvin Gordon.
You did.
I took my nuts, and I put him up on top of the table, and I said, hey, guys, here's my sack. Deal with it.
Right. It's right in front of your face, man. This was it might have been, you might have got the Gordon pick out, and you might have had maybe one more selection, and then after that it was still okay, guys. I have to. I'm gonna just auto draft the rest of this. Well, I'm out of here. So which I think overall, man, things kind of, it wasn't too bad for an auto draft. I mean, you got You got Big Mike Williams. You got Debo
Cooper
late.
Kupp.
You know.
After I put my nuts on the table, the news that came out about Melvin Gordon, it felt like the whole league was smacking him with fly swatters.
Yeah. So I was at 5 overall. Real quick, I'll just give you the kind of the high level first 4 to 5 picks as NATO did as well. So 5 overall. That 5 spot could be weird. Luckily, this was still a time last week again when the Ezekiel Elliott news was truly up in the air. So we might have had an auto drafter. Ryan, one of the writers, logged in a little bit late and grabbed Nick Chubb at 4 overall. So David Johnson was sitting for me there at 5, which was a no-brainer. So went ahead and got kind of the RB1, the workhorse there early. Ended up rattling off 4 or 5 wide receivers in a row. Mike Evans, Antonio Brown in the 3rd. Man, I can't really say no to Brown in the 3rd. Jules Edelman in the 4th. Calvin Ridley in the 5th, who I think is in just an absolute smash spot opposite Julio Jones. And God forbid anything were to happen to Julio Jones down in Atlanta. And then my 6th round pick, Will Fuller. So very happy with the wide receiver run, and then kind of mixed in a bunch of obviously zero running back type players. But overall, man, stoked about the format. Love the 4 flex spots, which might have been a little bit aggressive. Obviously, the 45-second timer was super aggressive.
The 45-second timer was way more aggressive than the 4 flex.
Yeah, I don't know what I was thinking, man. In all the leagues that I do, it's always like a minute and a half, but it feels like 5 minutes and a half. So I was like, man, 45. Let's just really get this thing moving, which was stupid. Never again. So that was my fault for anybody that's listening. That was participating in that. So, but again, like I said, next year, man, we'll be a lot more organized. Make sure you guys are checking out the Patreon account, patreon.com/breakoutfinder. We will make sure we get all the kind of, again, you sign up for that, you're going to be well ahead of all these type of leagues that we do, obviously next year, but also all sorts of other kind of whether articles in the works or podcast topics. Or again, you might sign up for the Patreon, Nate, and you might get a glimpse at this infamous sheet that's kind of, again, like you said, it's buried somewhere under Area 51 right now.
It's coming out, and like we talked about, man, we're willing to share, private information, talk to people about the rosters, Sunday before the games, pitcher questions about lineups and stuff like that. Now, I've been posting life stuff on there too, man. Pick up basketball game.
Chip's on there.
Yeah, there's just Chip is on there, man. There's just stuff on there. Go check it out. A lot of free content, some stuff behind the wall. There's something for everybody. This project is awesome. And again, we keep bringing up the Patreon because it's a great opportunity to get people in a more intimate location and talk about things. I want to talk more intimately about the Green Bay Packers. That's what I want to do.
Man, I had a bit of an intimate thing with Quanamea St. Brown, man. EQ St. Brown. For those who might venture out in kind of Debbie circles, we know the better St. Brown currently plays his football for Southern California, man. But we'll kind of table that for now. But EQ coming out of Notre Dame, man, I kind of had a thing for him, man. I like the tape. 6'5", 214, 4.48 40. The St. Brown, man, their pops. There's 3 brothers. Their pops might have been, and his name's escaping me right now, but their father might have been like a Mr. Universe or like a Mr. World or some crazy. Long story short, the genes in the St. Brown family are legit. So EQ. Definitely a decent athlete on playerprofile.com, draws at best comparable to Tyrell Williams, again 6'5", 214, 6th round pick, so didn't have that draft capital. So again, I can kind of spill my heart here all night for you guys about St. Brown, but landed on IR. His season's donezo in Green Bay and has kind of fallen by the wayside even before all that. Geronimo Allison has stepped up. We know about Devontae Adams. Marquez Valdez-Scantling is there, also a plus athlete and also infinitely more production already at this point in his career compared to St. Brown. I talk about St. Brown only to bring up Nate, Jake Kummerow. Fantastic hair, really good hair. A lot of lettuce, bro.
Yeah.
He's got, again, he's a little bit buried right now. Wide receiver 4 or 5, again, behind Adams, behind Allison, behind MVS. Do you have any sort of, again, this isn't Jeff Janis 2.0 or 3.0 or whatever over here, man. This is Jake Kummerow. Do you have any kind of Kummerow takes?
I mean, what do you say? We heard in the offseason Aaron Rodgers was a fan of Jake Kumro's
Smitten. He was
game,
smitten.
right?
The hair.
There
It
was
was the
something
hair
going
problem.
on there. It's literally the opposite of what we heard about Aaron Rodgers and Jeff Janis.
He hated Janis, bro.
Right? He hated Janis. I don't know what to say about Scantling and Geronimo Allison. On most any other roster, these guys are wide receiver 4s, but on this roster, which hasn't invested very heavily in the wide receiver position in quite some time. I think the last ones that were taken, and I'm spacing on one of the big names here. I think Jamon Moore might have been one that they took in round 5, but even before that, I think they took a round 4 receiver 2 years ago, and I'm spacing right now. There's just this roster is just not hyper talented. I mean, Valdez Scantling is an athletic freak. Geronimo Allison has been around, but on most rosters, these guys are not cutting the mustard. I mean, they're not. Them versus Laq Treadwell in Minnesota, they might have all got cut, But in Green Bay, they need anything they can. So with that being said, Jake Kumerow, I don't know. I don't know that he couldn't find his way further up this depth chart if these guys aren't playing up to snuff, right? I mean, there's no guarantees with these type of talents. So would I want to own him? If it's deep enough, sure, I'd roster him. What's the reality? Reality is he's just got great fucking hair and he's never going to play.
He's got fantastic hair, man. He might have been preseason game 2 or 3, but the Packers played the Raiders, and I tuned in for probably one of my only preseason actual live viewings of this particular preseason. And dude absolutely dusted Nick Nelson, the Raiders like 3rd or 4th string cornerback. Made it look really easy. But again, context matters. I'm excited for Kumerow only really because I just really want to shove that into all the Jeff Janis, the guys that spent hours, Matt Kelly, tweeting about the Jeff Janis and stuff like that, man. If Jake Kumerow can do it, man, whatever. I guess Aaron Rodgers' hate was just way too strong for Jeffrey Janis there, man. Another Matt Kelly favorite, another one of my favorites as well, honestly. Jerick McKinnon, man, moment of silence, bro. On IR again. Dude got the bag in San Francisco, IR last year, knees. Try to make it back this year. Again, a little bit too soon. In all seriousness, just a legit sad story for a player that, again, hit on a couple polarizing ones, but the Jerick McKinnon stuff was of course super polarizing, especially after he got paid out there in San Francisco. You pull the playerprofile.com. Kelly used to have the picture of the frog sipping the tea, but now he's just got McKinnon's mugshot there. Best comparison, LaDainian Tomlinson. We know McKinnon is a freaky freak, man. Kelly's got him here at the 100 percentile Spark X score, man. Legit a workout warrior, man. Obviously got a little bit of shine in Minnesota. Earned him a big payday in San Francisco, but a story that we'll never really see fully played out here. Again, IR 2 years in a row with the knee injuries, man. You have to imagine this is a player that will never look much like his former self.
Maybe they need to update his player profile or best comparable to Javid Best. Because that's really where his career has gone. I mean, take it for what it is. It never took off. It never manifested. And yes, it is a tragic way for his career to end. He's been paid. It has not manifested to the level at which people believed it would. I was never on board with McKinnon. He's a workout warrior. It didn't necessarily translate to the field fully. Samaje Perine can bench a lot of reps too, bro. Where's he at? I feel bad for the people that bought McKinnon at his peak, then it crashed, and then the people that bought in the down market spent like a late first to get him when he was recovering from ACL, and then the bottom fell out of the market again. There was a double bottom fallout on that market, and now you're upside down twice in your home. You're holding on to McKinnon. Now he's just an absolute flyer. What happens to him? I don't know. Man, I don't even know if we can do a moment of silence. I think I've spent too many moments on Jerick McKinnon. I think his moment's over.
No, yeah. This is I know it was and again I'm sure Kelly's gonna let you have it, probably let me have it too, but he was a Sign of Truth Pod favorite and a favorite of many men, and like you said, the road surely looks like it's gonna end here, or if it doesn't, I'm not really sure the type of player that you are getting post this latest IR stop here. So few more here, bro. Few more storylines, and then I kind of grouped up a bunch of players that we can just quickly go over as we look to wrap things up here. Taywan Taylor, or excuse me, yeah, Taywan Taylor, man, a draft Twitter favorite at one point in time out in Tennessee, cut and then scooped up immediately by Cleveland, man. Cleveland scooping up all these guys, man. There's way too many bodies over there. Are we making anything of Taywan Taylor's stop in Cleveland?
Is somebody going to get fired for the Taywan Taylor pick? I mean, you know what I mean? Like, how in the world does Taywan Taylor enter the NFL in 2017 and get cut after 2 seasons as a 3rd-round pick? It's not his fault. You were playing Tajay Sharp ahead of him the entirety of his time there. Taywan Taylor was an incredible college producer, 78th percentile college dominator, 84th percentile college yards per reception, a pretty good athlete, 50th percentile spark score, but the agility score, 93rd percentile, best comparable to Doug Baldwin on Player Profiler. We were praying that Taywan Taylor would go somewhere else, and he has. He went to the Cleveland Browns. This depth chart on the surface looks pretty tough to crack, but let's break it down a minute. Odell Beckham, not going anywhere. Jarvis Landry, pretty elite for what he does, for what he brings to the table. Not a good athlete. Rashad Higgins, a guy that's high in the breakout finder, also not a good athlete. Reality is this depth chart, not really that deep. And an explosive, stretch playmaker like Taywan Taylor might actually find a role in this offense sooner than later. A great landing spot. I couldn't be happier about it. Not happier if you're a running back. Happy if you're Taywan Taylor, though.
Right. Fair enough, man. Fair enough. One thing that I've been, again, you had your moment with Greg Dortch, and one thing that I've been going through here, bro. One thing that I'm not particularly happy about. We're happy for Taywan Taylor. I'm the opposite of happy for my guy John Kelly, man. Out in Los Angeles. I guess the writing was more or less on the wall when they went ahead and invested in Darrell Henderson early. But John Kelly, man, deeply personal favorite of mine. A year or two ago, Matt Kelly dropped his infamous draft kit. I was lucky enough to speak for 45 seconds or a minute about my love for John Kelly. John Kelly coming out of Tennessee, man, 84th percentile college dominator, a 93rd percentile college target share. What he didn't have was any sort of athleticism, unfortunately. A 9th percentile Spark X score, which was something that a lot of us, myself in particular, were okay overlooking because the hashtag film was so good. 5'10", checked in at 216 BMI, which is something that we pay particular attention to for running backs, was 68th percentile, 31. It was BMI 31 there. So a smaller back to an extent, but a player that had no problem just being a bully, and a guy that was carrying the load out in Tennessee. Obviously landed in Los Angeles behind Todd Gurley, which was kind of where the death sentence started. Even when Gurley, was banged up last year himself, the Rams never really turned to John Kelly in any sort of capacity, which again, that death knell just kind of got louder and louder. And again, here we are, man. I've been up long hours at night, bro, just thinking about John Kelly. It's not something that I'm particularly happy about here. So I'm not sure that there's much of a future for John Kelly down the road here. Did you didn't have any sort of affinity for John Kelly coming out of school, did you?
No, not really. I mean, I appreciated the takes that you guys had. Josh Norris was a big fan of him as well. I don't look at this like it's a cautionary tale for Devin Singletary when we talk about like lack of athleticism, because the reality is that John Kelly didn't get on the field not only because he played behind Todd Gurley, but because he was a 6th-round pick. There was no draft capital truly invested in him, where Devin Singletary is a 3rd-round pick. And so his opportunity will come much sooner than John Kelly's, whose opportunity never came. So I don't have much to add other than the fact that there's many arguments that can be made for athleticism, but opportunity is dictated by draft capital oftentimes, and length of opportunity, how long your leash is. Again, go back to Trent Richardson. Draft capital can extend your life. You can have 9 lives because you went in the first round, even though you're absolutely terrible.
Yeah.
Lack of draft capital, on the other hand, might mean that you never get a shot at all. So
Right. So we got, man. So this is the end of the road for us, Nate, for this particular show. Before I kick it back over to you and you kind of close things out for us here, I jotted down a little more than half a dozen or so names that players that recently, to kind of stay with the theme of today's show. Obviously all these roster cuts and teams getting ready to submit their final 53-man roster. So a handful of players here. I'm gonna just read down the list, man, and we can maybe pick and choose one or two of them out of the list. These are names that when I saw them pop up on the timeline, or obviously scrolling through a fantastic site like Roto World, these are names that I kind of perked up out of my seat a little bit. These are names that we, the draft Twitter, film watching, fantasy football communities spent way too much time arguing about or over or for or against or whatever the case may be. And here they are sitting teamless for one reason or another, whether, like you said, whether it's draft capital, whether it's poor testing, all these warts that these players had that we've been talking about all show long. It's so easy for us to turn a blind eye as fans when you fall in love with the film or the prospect themselves. But end of the road, reality sets in, and here they are, man. Samaje Perine released, landed in Cincinnati, though, I believe. Keelan Doss, Hard Knocks favorites on the Raiders, released. Turned down a Raiders practice squad offer, went ahead and now is playing football in Jacksonville. Marcel Aitman, another Raider that was contributing a little bit towards the end of last season. Boston Scott, I remember hearing that name a lot when he was coming out, smaller back, had some hands, had a little bit of production. Stanley Morgan Jr. was a player that the breakout finder was tweeting out a little bit about last year as well. Gone in Cincinnati. Jordan Matthews, remember Jordan Matthews, man? Gone in San Francisco. Jeremy McNichols, I'll never forget the Jeremy McNichols, Deontay Foreman days, man. Jamon Moore, the player that you just brought up, gone in Green Bay. Josh Adams, running back, got a couple snaps last year in Philadelphia, gone. Emmanuel Hall, who I was particularly high on, fantastic athlete, kind of maybe boxed himself in as a deep threat only, had some notable injury issues, and had some kind of some hands issues as well. Gone in Chicago, gone in Tampa Bay, already through a couple different teams there. And Chad Williams in Arizona, man, was another name that I believe Player Profiler was high on. I'm not sure where the breakout finder stood on him, but a player that many were kind of intrigued about out in Arizona at one point in time. Gone in Arizona. Obviously, Arizona completely revamping their pass catching group there. Nate, out of those names, or if I missed anyone, bro, who might stand out in particular for you? Who was the player that we might have spent a little bit too much time on that, again, ultimately, as you can tell, it didn't really matter?
Oh man, who got too much time spent on him? I spent 45 minutes arguing with Matt Kelly about Jeremy McNichols, who's now played on 5 NFL teams and been cut and waived from 5 NFL teams. Look, this is crazy to me. Listen, man, I don't know. It's just bananas. But on this list, Samaje Perine, he had his opportunity in an offense that had really no competition. Couldn't ascend, couldn't make it happen. Stanley Morgan Jr. ranked number 10 overall in the breakout finder in this year's class. So that's a name that I might keep an eye on. He had decent athleticism, good college production. Outside of that, Emmanuel Hall, another good athlete. But most of these names, man, I think Jordan Matthews is one of the weirder stories when we look back in history at guys who fell from grace. I mean, one of the strangest sets of production early in his career to essentially just fall out of favor with the whole league. But nonetheless, no, not really. I don't have any takes on any of these guys other than the fact that the unfortunate reality is had Deontay Foreman not torn his Achilles tendon, you guys know who won the argument with Matt Kelly. I mean, it's more than well documented, but he was sticking needles in the Deontay Foreman voodoo doll, and Matt Kelly pulled
out.
himself out of tie.
It worked out.
And
man, we're long overdue for a Matt Kelly player breakout finder appearance here. So in the coming weeks for sure, we gotta get him back on the show. I would love to just bring up towards the end of the show. I'd love to bring up casually the Foreman McNichols debate, just because I love seeing you two just get riled up here, man.
Yeah.
So I think again that was we talked way too long about all these players that, again, unfortunately, the sad reality is that they have hit an unfortunate, bump in the road, so to speak. So a lot of roster cuts, a lot of players on the move as teams kind of trim down things. Nate, man, why don't you put a bow on this one for us, man, and get us the hell out of here?
All right. Man, we have content all over the place. Recently, a Facebook page got started, so facebook.com/breakout finder. Check that out. There's unique stuff going on there. We have an Instagram account, a YouTube account. I mean, go check out all these things. If you want the video version of this, if you want to see where Ryan caused me to go into a tirade by bringing up Greg Dortch, or you want to look at his closet, go
right
to
here.
YouTube, search Breakout Finder, come find these videos. It'll be up here towards Thursday, a few days from when this drops. It's going to drop tomorrow morning, which is Wednesday. That's what we do. And then again, of course, if you guys are interested, as the season's coming around, there's a huge value in joining the Patreon. A lot of fun stuff going on there. Patreon.com/breakout finder. And we're going to have a amazing guest next week.
Very excited.
Very
excited.
And get ready, because there's gonna be some fiascos going down. Pre-planned bits already been worked out with Ryan and I. It's just gonna be absolutely incredible. This podcast continues to ascend. The website's getting a lot of traffic. New articles are dropping all the time. So again, rate the show on iTunes, review it, whatever you guys can do. Help us boost this. It helps us get it out there and get us more resources to bring on more good writers, more good guests. We want to continue to deliver you guys good free content, and that's the way we get there. So Ryan, once again, a fantastic show from you, sir. Tip of the cap. Thank you for just cracking the closet door just a little bit.
It's kind of something about this is kind of central to me. It's kind of like I don't want you to really know what's back there, but I'll give you I'll give you something. I'll give you something to look at.
A little bit.
I'll get you, And once in a while, you see your boy. I'll kind of lean back so people can see,
I don't think
something.
you do that on purpose.
I don't. I completely forgot, bro. I was gonna close that, and if Matt Kelly was on the show, he would have yelled at me for sure.
Do the rollout. All right. Well, thank you everybody for checking in. We'll be back next week. Enjoy the show.